So very good morning to all of you. Today we are going to study about the developmental administration. Developmental administration, it is a very important topic with respect to the PUBAD. This topic is not only going to help you to understand and to write the answers in your optional paper, rather it will also help you to write the answers in your general studies paper, right? It is very important topic, and there are the number of the topics relating to the development, the concept of the development, and that will also going to help you in your essay paper. So one need to be very substantive, one need to be the very objective with respect to the very terminology, with respect to the very concept, right? So we are trying to understand in today's class that what is the notion of the development, how the development has its own journey from its the very evolutions to the contemporary time. All those aspects we are trying to unfold in the today's class. So development इस concept को आप अच्छे से समझ के रखें क्योंकि ये बहुत ही important topic है, and more or less that it will going to help you to write and to attempt as well as to understand the various other peoples, right? Not only it is confining to your the developmental dynamics or the developmental administration whatever given in your syllabus, but it will help you to understand the concept of the urbanizations as well. It will also help you to understand the concept of the sustainable development, right? So all those aspects we are trying to unfold in the today's class. So let us start the today's session. So whenever we say that the concept of the development, let us start in a very layman's term, right? Okay, what do you mean by the development? If somebody is saying, and we generally use the term the difference between the growth and the development, or in a colloquial term the development means the increase in the level of the standard of living. That someone say the development means it is measured in terms of its economic growth, that is measured through the increase in the national income, per capita income, or gross domestic product. So is it so? Is it that only one dimension that the development captures, or it is something a qualitative notion, right? So development का मतलब क्या होता है? Development का मतलब not only in terms of the quantitative aspect that is measured through the economic growth, rather contemporary time the focus more also in terms of the qualitative notions like the conducive environment for the life and justice, like the conducive environment for the standard of living, advancement in terms of the standard of living. It try to make a balance between the one hand there is economic growth, on the other hand there shall be the conservation of the nature as well as conservation of the environment. So today we are focusing on more and more on sustainable development. So development का मतलब एक broader concept है. Here we try to understand it in an objective way, that what is actually the development means. Okay? So let us start this topic, and we will take up the topic in a let's say subparts manner. Like we first of all will take up the epistemological the concept with respect to the development. जब भी हम लोग epistemology की बात करते हैं, epistemology का मतलब क्या होता है कि very that is called first thought, right? That is called very starting point. जब भी हम लोग epistemology की बात करते हैं, epistemology means that is what is the very that is called the traditional viewpoint with respect to the notion of the development. What is the meaning of development for a general people mean? So the story of the development started from here. The topic is covered, that is called epistemological view with respect to the development. Okay, what is that? This is the epistemological view. Epistemological. So epistemological view, what it say? The epistemological say that there are certain activities which are called the developmental activities, and there are certain activities who are called non-developmental activities. It means the proponents, the thinkers, they try to make a categorical differences between this hand is called developmental activities and that hand is called, let's say, non-developmental activities. So any of the administration, any of the government machinery which is undertaking the developmental activities, these are called the developmental administration. And any of the government machinery or any of the administrative system which is undertaking the non-developmental activities are called non-developmental administration. Getting my point? So what is the beginning point? That is, the developmental administration basically understood in terms of the developmental activities as well as the non-developmental activities. Okay? So what is the developmental activity? There are certain activities like the educations, like health, let's say the development of the land. So these are something called the developmental activities. But there are certain activities, for example, the law and order, let's say administration of justice, let's say policing. So let's say the collection of the taxes. So thereby there are the certain activities, these are something called or something categorically referred as non-developmental activities. So what do you mean by the developmental administration? So developmental administration means a type of administration which is undertaking the developmental activities. For example, health, education, let's say the development of the land, development of the skills, these are something called the developmental activities. But on the other hand, there are certain activities, for example, the administration of justice, for example, the law and order, for example, the policing, for example, the collection of the taxes. Such type of activities are something called the non-developmental activities, and the administrative system undertaking this non-developmental activities are called non-developmental administrative system. So this is the beginning point, right? So this definition and this distinction is not very suitable. It is something called the superfluous. It is called the superfluous distinction between the non-developmental activities and the developmental activities. So thereby the scholars come and they say that no, we cannot go ahead with this because we cannot separate out. That is something called a watertight distinction between developmental activities and a watertight distinction with respect to non-developmental activities. We cannot have a compartmentalization division. So बाद में फिर कुछ scholars आए and let us, after understanding basic premise of the developmental administration, now let us take up the historical viewpoint with respect to the developmental administration. So what was the historical viewpoint? Let's see. So let us understand that is called the historical development. So whenever we say the historical the viewpoint with respect to the developmental administration, it is basically the post-World War phenomena. So post-World War के बाद ही the concept of the development, it was conceptualized. We will understand all these. Basically the concept was developed by the West. The conceptual development comes from the West, but the very meaning of the development comes from in the context of the developing countries. So we can also link that is called chapter on the comparative public administration, that how the Fredericks try to understand the differences with respect to the administrative system, that what he said, that there are the limitations of the Weberian model, the Weberian bureaucracy, and in the context of the developing countries, even there is imbalanced polity. So thereby the Weberian model cannot apply directly in the context of the developing countries, in the context of, let's say, the global south countries, and you expect that there shall be the efficiency. So इसी दौर में इसी concept of the development को भी लोग study कर रहे थे and they try to understand what should be the concept of the development, the model of development. So the post-World War time, right, few points, that in the post-World War time, that there was the historical viewpoint, and in the historical viewpoint they try to understand that in the context of newly developing, newly independent countries, there are the two important phenomena. ठीक है, ऐसे आप समझिए कि that what was the time, that it was the post-World War time. So post-World War time में क्या conditions था? It was, let's say, Cold War politics is going on. Let's say bipolar politics is going on. So bipolar politics is what? There is a competition, there is a hegemonic race between the capitalism and the socialism, right? So there is one camp of the globe which is let's say the adopting and that following the system of the capitalist model, they are driven by the West. And on the other hand, there are the communist system, there are the socialist system which are following the, let's say, the socialistic model, they reach another camp. So in this hegemonic race, they try to establish their supremacy. So West ने क्या start किया था? That is called assistance program. That in order to contain the communism. So उस समय जो administrative systems थे in the context of the developing countries, getting my point, that world is divided into two camps. Let's say West and let's say East, or better to say हम लोग अभी पढ़ेंगे Rest. ठीक है? That is called the President Truman's the dichotomy of the West versus Rest concept with respect to the development. So let's say हम लोग यूज कर रहे हैं that is something called West and there is something called Rest. Rest का मतलब developing countries, the global south countries, LDC countries. So 1950s, ठीक है, इसी समय आप थोड़ा याद करोगे what was the beginning point of the CPA, comparative public administration, 1950. Okay, 1960 was the golden period. So comparative politics administration में क्या हुआ था basically? The scholars of the West, they try to understand the administrative systems of the East or administrative systems of the developing countries, and they try to provide, let's say, some normative prescriptions for administrative system. Normative मैंने बताया था, it was something prescriptive. It means what should be. So they first of all understand that what is the administrative system in the case of Rest, and then they try to dictate it. They simply tried some prescription that what should be the administrative system so that they can address the needs and the challenges to the society, and they can address the needs and requirements of the society. Because there in the society, there are a number of disabilities, there are the number of problems, there are a number of issues. Now, when they directly applied, Weber को जब directly apply किया, तो वो problems को address नहीं कर पा रहे थे. There are the problem. So जब problem ही address नहीं होगा, then why the developing countries are going to adopt the capitalist model? Because कुछ समय के बाद जो scholars होंगे developing countries के context में, they would try to challenge the wisdom that behind the developmental model being prospered by the West. ऐसा ही कुछ होगा, हम लोग आज भी देखेंगे. So उस समय basically point is कि 1950 that developmental administration का मतलब administrative system in the context of the Rest, the scholars of the West, they try to understand. They try to understand. And why they try to understand? Because in order to address the disabilities in the context of the Rest. So write here points. That 1950 or in the post-World War the time, this was the time for the newly independent nations, and in the context of newly independent countries, there are the number of issues and the number of disabilities. So scholars during the time of the comparative public administration, the scholars of the West or the developed countries, they try to understand the disabilities and the issues in the context of the developing countries, and they try to provide certain prescriptive dimensions to the administrative systems of the developing countries so that they can address the disabilities of the developing country. So what were the disabilities? Number of problems थे, बहुत सारी issues थे, number of disabilities थी, but primarily the developing countries are focusing on the developing countries were focusing on the two important issues. What were the two important issues? The two important issues were the nation building, and second is the rapid socio-economic development. What was that? The first issue was the nation building and second was the rapid socio-economic development. Nation building, why? Because it's independent nations. One have to be the, let's say, vocal player in case of the international global politics. At the same time, there shall be a sovereign government. In order to have a legitimacy of the sovereign government, there shall be a good as well as the substantive progress with respect to the nation building. So basically दो challenges थे उस समय, and what were the two challenges? That is called problem of the, let's say, nation building and the socio-economic development. So इसी socio-economic development के लिए that the countries are following either that is called capitalist system, and they try to adopt either as the socialist system. ठीक है? Let's say for example in case of India, when in 1947 that India got independence, okay, so India के पास भी options थे whether to adopt the socialist model or whether to adopt the capitalist model. So the हमारे यहाँ पर जो freedom fighters थे, the national scholars, let's say especially our the first prime minister Pandit Nehru, right? He was called that the true follower of the socialist, devout socialist. But उनका जो model of socialism था, it was not the socialism of, let's say, that is called Soviet USSR. Rather, there is something called purification or refinement with respect to the concept of socialism. इसीलिए the पंडित नेहरू के सोशलिज्म को क्या बोलते हैं हम लोग? फेबियन सोशलिज्म. ठीक है, द फेबियन सोशलिज्म या फैब सोशलिज्म. फेबियन सोशलिज्म का मतलब क्या होता है कि इट बेसिकली फोकस्ड ऑन द मिडिल क्लास ऑफ द सोसाइटी. इसी को बोलते हैं फेबियन सोशलिज्म कि इट फोकस ऑन द मिडिल क्लास ऑफ द सोसाइटी. ठीक है. सो बट द गांधीयन सोशलिज्म की बात करेंगे. सो गांधीयन सोशलिज्म ही फोकस्ड ऑन द लोअर क्लास ऑफ द सोसाइटी और द लोअर हायरार्की ऑफ द सोसाइटी. तो ये बेसिक डिफरेंसेस है, कभी हम लोग और डिटेल में बात करेंगे. सो देयर बाय दैट हमारे यहाँ जो फ्रीडम द नेशनल लीडर्स थे, दे गॉन एंड दे वेंट अहेड विद द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशंस ऑफ ऑलमोस्ट 64 कंट्रीज and took a long time to prepare our constitution, and they adopted this economic model that is something called the mixed economic system. And what is the mixed economy? There shall be both the public sector as well as both the private sector. So dear, nobody has the doubt, कुछ the basic जानते ही होंगे ना आप लोग. What is the difference between the socialism and the capitalism? The capitalism means the means of productions. कोई भी organizations है, that means of production is controlled by a bourgeois. बुर्जुआ मतलब एलिटिस्ट क्लास, इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट क्लास. ठीक है. तो कैपिटलिज्म ऑपरेट्स थ्रू द प्रिंसिपल्स ऑफ मार्केट, दैट इज डिमांड एंड सप्लाई. बट ऑन द अदर हैंड, दैट इफ देयर इज सोशलिज्म, देन द व्हाट that is called in socialism that everything is controlled by the state. In the socialism there shall not be a private property, but in capitalism there shall be the private property. So thereby India के केस में क्या हम लोग बोलते हैं? It is mixed economy. What do you mean by the mixed economy? There shall be both the private sector as well as public sector. Primarily हमारा model of development, it's a planned development. It shall be on the basis of the 5-year planning, and it is something called the basis is socialism. But there shall also be the private players. There shall also be private sector. So thereby both will contribute to the development of the nation, and that is called Indian model of the socialism and Indian model of the development. ठीक है. So come back 1950s के टाइम में what they found that number of disabilities are there in the context of the developing countries, and primarily the two important issues थे, that is called the nation building challenge, and second is the rapid socio-economic development. So thereby they need assistance, and assistance comes in terms of assistance programs of the West. ठीक है. They need assistance, and that assistance comes in terms of assistance programs of the West. ठीक है. Now let us try to understand कि ये दो जो challenges थे, that is called the nation building, इसके लिए क्या चाहिए हमको? Political stability. And for socio-economic development, what we have to need? There is need for efficient administrative system. ठीक है. So write 2 points that in order to address the challenge or the issue of the nation building, one requires the political stability, and in order to address the rapid socio-economic development, one need to what? One need to, that is called, there shall be a efficient administrative system. Okay. So write these 2 points. So this is the historical view, and what was the historical view? That in the post-World War time and during the era of the comparative politics administration, that is CPA, the scholars of the West, they try to build up the conceptual development or conceptual construct with respect to the developmental administration, and thereby they basically highlighted there are the two important issues, there are the two major issues that the developing countries are facing, that is called problem of the nation building and the rapid socio-economic development. So write a simple points that during this time the West actually try to understand the the concept of the development, but the meaning of the development got in the context of the developing countries. ठीक है. So after understanding this historical view, let us take some theoretical premise so that we have a better insight into the concept of the development. So let's take the next that is called aspect, that is called theoretical model with respect to the developmental administration. So dear, let us try to understand this theoretical view or theoretical model with respect to the developmental administration. Okay, this is a very interesting topic. Okay, that when you got the entire theme, then you will find that you have the very enriched in terms of the concept of the development, and it will help you to imbibe the other concept in your the general studies paper and a lot of the other areas. Okay, so let us take this the theoretical model कि developmental administration basically क्या है, theory क्या है, ठीक है? Okay, we have understood the issues, okay, we have understood let's say some paradigm, but now let's see that what should be the other dimensions of administration or what should be the other dimension of the DA, that is called developmental administration. So इसमें कुछ हम लोग school of thoughts देखेंगे so that we have a better insight that what is the first school that we will take up the viewpoints of the CPG and the CAG. Why the CPG and CAG? Hopefully all of you are getting. Go to the Fredericks, that there were the two institutions that is called comparative politics group and comparative administrative groups. और comparative administrative groups के कौन थे चेयरमैन? That is called Fredericks. ठीक है, बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट है, आप लोग बात हम इस चीज को ध्यान में रखेंगे. So comparative politics group, what he tried to highlight it, they simply say कि याद करिए दो इशू क्या थे. फर्स्ट इशू इज द व्हाट, द नेशन बिल्डिंग, एंड सेकंड इशू वाज द सोशियो इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट. ठीक है, तो व्हाट वाज द फर्स्ट इशू, दैट इज कॉल्ड नेशन बिल्डिंग, एंड सेकंड इशू वाज द सोशियो इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट. सो पॉलिटिकल ग्रुप्स दैट इज कॉल्ड सीपीजी, कंपैरेटिव पॉलिटिक्स ग्रुप, दे एडवोकेटेड कि किसी भी प्रोसेस ऑफ डेवलपमेंट या किसी भी मॉडल ऑफ डेवलपमेंट के लिए सबसे पहले हमें क्या चाहिए, देयर शैल बी द पॉलिटिकल स्टेबिलिटी. ठीक है, द फ्रेडरिक्स ने क्या हाईलाइट किया था कि इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ द डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज देयर इज इम्बैलेंस पॉलिटी. द पॉलिटिकल एग्जीक्यूटिव्स आर नॉट सो मैच्योर सो दैट देयर कैन कंट्रोल द ब्यूरोक्रेसी, द डोमिनेंस बिहेवियर ऑफ द ब्यूरोक्रेसी. इसलिए क्या है इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ डेवलपिंग कंट्री, स्ट्रॉन्ग ब्यूरोक्रेसी. और स्ट्रॉन्ग ब्यूरोक्रेसी डेमोक्रेसी के लिए क्या है, डेंजर है. सो उन्होंने क्या बोला था, उसी तरह के अदर स्कॉलर्स जो थे उस टाइम में, दे एडवोकेटेड दैट द डेवलपमेंट, यस द नोशन ऑफ द डेवलपमेंट शैल बी देयर, बट बिफोर दैट देयर शैल बी द पॉलिटिकल स्टेबिलिटी. सो उन्होंने वो जो नेशन बिल्डिंग वाला एस्पेक्ट किया था कि हाउ द नेशन बिल्डिंग इज पॉसिबल, दैट नेशन बिल्डिंग इज पॉसिबल व्हेन देयर इज समथिंग कॉल्ड द पॉलिटिकल मैच्योरिटी एंड देयर इज समथिंग कॉल्ड पॉलिटिकल, that is called stability. So what is the status of the development, what is the notion of the development, there shall be the political stability, तभी the development possible है. आप लिख लेंगे इस पॉइंट को, that the comparative politics group they advocated that the conditions of the development, the notion of the development is possible when there is the political stability, right? But on the other hand, if we take up the viewpoint, if the comparative administrative group, the comparative administrative group, they highlighted, yes, in addition to this, the what is called the stability with respect to the politics, there shall be efficiency with respect to the administrative system, so and so there shall be this so rapid socio-economic development. Rapid socio-economic development के लिए क्या होना चाहिए, efficiency of administrative system होना चाहिए. So CPG focused on what, political aspect, but the CAG they focused on what, administrative aspect. ठीक है, आप ये छोटे से डायमेंशन को समझ लेंगे. सो व्हाट इज द सीएजी व्यू पॉइंट, दे से दैट in order to attain the conditions of the development, there shall be efficiency with respect to the administrative system, and administrative system functions well in the environment what the balance conditions of what the polity. मतलब there shall be, हमें कहाँ से मूव करना होगा, इम्बैलेंस पॉलिटी से किधर मूव करना होगा, बैलेंस पॉलिटी की ओर ना, तभी एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव सिस्टम अच्छे से फंक्शन करेगा, तभी एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव सिस्टम दी ऑब्जेक्टिव वैल्यूज उसको अटेन करेगा, एंड देयर शैल बी व्हाट, द रैपिड सोशियो इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट. ठीक है, सो आफ्टर द टू स्कूल्स लेट अस से द नैरो व्यू पॉइंट. नैरो व्यू पॉइंट बेसिकली कुछ है नहीं, द नैरो व्यू पॉइंट सिंपली द what is called most that is called common understanding with respect to the development, कि जब भी हम लोग डेवलपमेंट की बात करते हैं, so what is the meaning of development, that is economic growth. So narrow viewpoint, right, simply that narrow viewpoint focus that the conditions of the development, the notion of the development means the increase in the level of economic growth. So economic growth is measured in terms of, let's say, gross domestic product, it is measured in terms of the national income, it is measured in terms of the per capita income, okay. So thereby, what is this? The notion of the development. So developmental administration should work to increase the economic growth. It should be addressing, it should be working so that there shall be increase in terms of the gross domestic product to the country, to the economy. Getting my point? So उन्होंने किस aspect पे focus किया? सिर्फ economic aspect. The development means economic growth, monetary aspect. ठीक है? So write it terms. The economic growth, it means it is a quantitative notions. ठीक है? It is a quantitative notion. So the narrow viewpoint, they simply try to focus on the quantitative aspect of the development that is measured in terms of economic growth. Okay? But there are another groups, they say no, the development, it is a broader concept, so that it not only be measured and not only to be confined only in terms of its economic growth, rather there shall be the social development, shall be cultural development, shall be political development, there shall be other dimensions as well. So development का मतलब क्या होना चाहिए? A conditions of what? There have to be standard of living, there shall be improved standard of living, so it should not be confined with measured to be only in terms of the monetary value, there shall be non-monetary aspect as well. It means something, it is a qualitative notions. Qualitative notion means कि कोई आदमी लेट्स से हैप्पी है एंड ही फील दैट ही इन द स्टेट ऑफ द हैप्पीनेस, तो उसके लिए हैप्पीनेस इज द मॉडल ऑफ द डेवलपमेंट. किसी के लिए लेट्स से हैव द गुड रिलेशनशिप विद अदर्स, दैट इज द कंडीशंस ऑफ डेवलपमेंट. गुड एनवायरमेंट कल्चर, दैट इज कॉल्ड गुड ऑर्गेनाइजेशनल कल्चर, दैट शैल बी द स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ डेवलपमेंट. फॉर द मेनी ऑफ द पीपल देयर शैल बी द डेमोक्रेटिक सेटअप, इट शैल बी द मॉडल ऑफ द डेवलपमेंट. So democratic system means what? That the peoples are other stakeholders in the decision making process. The peoples can take up the autonomous decision. So these are the conditions of the development. So not only the development is what? Measured through the gross domestic product, rather it shall also going to include the level of happiness. It also going to include that to what extent there shall be the freedom of press, to the freedom of the peoples, to what extent the people can exercise the liberty, to what extent the people can express their what is called the right to expression is there, means article 19 is there, to what extent the people are exercising the good conditions of the livelihood, to what extent the peoples are that experiencing the good standard of the life, it means article 21, right? So there shall be the social, cultural, political, economical, all those aspects are going to be covered within the concept of the development. ठीक है? सो ये इनका व्यू पॉइंट था, दैट इज कॉल्ड द ब्रॉडर व्यू पॉइंट. सो ब्रॉडर व्यू पॉइंट फोकस दैट development not only includes the economic, rather it also includes social, cultural, political and all those aspects. It means they are taking the qualitative viewpoint. ठीक है? So quantitative जब भी बोलते हैं हम लोग, which is measured. So economic growth, gross domestic product you can measure, but you cannot measure the happiness. For example, let's say for Bhutan, the Bhutan developed an index that is called gross national happiness, and for them the level of happiness is going to determine the level of what is called advancement, the level of development. So for the Bhutan it is the level of happiness, but for the West, for the capitalist system, that it is the national product, it is the gross domestic product that shall be increased and that determines the level of happiness. क्योंकि जो इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ मॉडल है उनका क्या फोकस एरिया था कि द इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ that will have a trickle down effect, और वो जो proper problems of the society है, like let's say unemployment, let's say uneducation, let's say poverty, वो सब को take care करेगा. So there is something called trickle down effect. हम लोग आज फिर बाद में देखेंगे, but let us try to focus that narrow viewpoint only focused on economical aspect, but the broader viewpoint they focus on the qualitative aspect, qualitative notions, right? Social, cultural, political, etc. all the aspect of the development. ठीक है? Now let us take the organizational view and the ecological view with respect to this model of the development. The organizational view simply say that there shall be bureaucracy. मतलब यहाँ पर हम लोग bureaucracy की बात करेंगे. How this development can be achieved, how the development can be accrued, there shall be an efficient bureaucracy. It means the Weberian bureaucracy shall be there. Okay, because we have the Weber's model on the bureaucracy, it is simply highlighted that the bureaucracy is very instrumental, it is a means to an end, because the problems of the society can only be addressed if there shall be a better administrative system, there shall be an efficient professional administrative system, and that is something called bureaucracy. So bureaucracy is capable administration can only take care the issues, the problems of the society, and the conditions of the development can be achieved. So simply you write on that the organizational viewpoint, they simply try to focus on organizational efficiency, the organizational management, and they say that organizational management, organizational efficiency is possible, the problems of the society, issues of the society can better addressed if there shall be professional bureaucracy, if there shall be efficient bureaucracy, and there shall be, and that is something called a professionalized system of administration. But on the other hand, the ecological view, they disagree with this concept of the organizational view. They say no, that the model of development not only take care about the administrative system, that is bureaucracy, rather it shall be contextual. It means that the development should also take care about the conservation of the environment. The development should also take care about what? That what is the impact, both the positive and negative, as well as on the society as well as on the environment. मतलब इन्होंने सिर्फ क्या focus किया? There shall be the social impact assessment. There shall be environmental impact assessment before to undertake any of the projects. Okay? So project means what? It is, there is something called exploitation of the resources. So one day if there shall be uncontrolled exploitation of the resources, there lead that one day would come that led into the ecological disturbance, ecological unbalance, and that would not be the condition of development. Development का मतलब क्या होना चाहिए? There shall be the balance between the conservation, the balance between the economic development as well as the conservation of the what resources, conservation of environment. That is something called balanced ecological approach. हम लोग एंटी डेवलपमेंटल में भी देखेंगे इस एस्पेक्ट को, ठीक है? But for the time being, after going through these 6 school of thoughts, what we can say? We simply say that what shall be the theoretical premise of the development? The development is both a notion of qualitative as well as quantitative. The development requires a professional bureaucracy. The developmental requires a efficient bureaucracy. At the same time, the development and the bureaucracy should work to increase the standard of living. It shall work to increase the social, cultural, political, administrative, all the dimensions of the society. It shall going to increase the standard of living, and it shall going to increase the autonomous decision making. The people shall be stakeholder in the decision making process, and there shall be a participative approach of the development, both in terms of its policy making as well as in terms of the policy framing. In the one hand, there shall be the political stability that is going to have a positive repercussions on the society, because in the political stable environment, the economic system will prosper, and economic system will going to contribute in order to increase the let's say the gross domestic product, and that would have the positive and the trickle down effect, and so that the problems of the society, like let's say what that is called let's say illiteracy, let's say malfunctioning, let's say poverty, let's say health problem, all that can be addressed. So this is a small theoretical premise with respect to the developmental administration. So after this, let's take up this historical view, or better to say the changing profile of the developmental administration, कि जब 1950 के onwards तक अभी तक developmental administration का changing profile, changing paradigm कैसे change हो रहा था, ठीक है? इनिशियली इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ मॉडल से शुरू हुआ, और अभी के टाइम में उसको बोलते हैं हम लोग दैट इज कॉल्ड न्यू लिबरल मार्केट लेड स्ट्रैटेजी. सो लेट अस understand all this episodic phenomena, that how the developmental administration started as state-led Weberian model, that is something called economic growth model, that and today we have that neoliberal, that is market-led strategy, that is called model of development in the era of the good governance. ठीक है? सो हम लोग अब इसको देखते हैं, दैट इज कॉल्ड चेंजिंग प्रोफाइल ऑफ द डेवलपमेंटल एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन. ठीक है? नाउ Before to take up this changing profile of the developmental administration, let's take the two important scholars, that is called Fredericks and the George Gantt, what they said with respect to this developmental administration. So कुछ individual scholars हैं like the Fredericks, that is called the George Gantt and the E. Widner. We will take up the viewpoint of the Fredericks and the George Gantt. ठीक है. So जब भी आप डेवलपमेंटल की बात करेंगे और डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज में बात करेंगे तो फ्रेडरिक्स आएगा ही आएगा, राइट. So now let us say that what the Frederick said. Frederick simply said, friends, that जब भी हम लोग डेवलपमेंटल एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन या पबैड पढ़ते हैं, so they try to concretize the concept. So concretization of concept का मतलब आप चीजों को एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू में लेके आओ. From the point of view of administrative system, they try to visualize the things. ठीक है, because everything is what? That administration means what? That is called collective activities undertaken by the government to serve the people, to take care of the people. ठीक है. Now let us see that what the Fredericks had said. Fredericks ने क्या बोला होगा? Fredericks ने of course administrative system के बारे में बात की होगी. So उन्होंने बोला कि जो developmental administration है, what is this, or better to say developmental dynamics. ठीक है, I will use the term. The developmental dynamics means the two important area, that is called the administration of development and the developmental administration. So you simply write, the Fredericks say that the developmental dynamics going to capture the two important dimensions, that is called administration of development and developmental of administration. So let us try to understand all these. So administration of development का मतलब simply क्या होता है कि let's say there is something called developmental activities, there is something called the administration. So supervision of all those activities is called the administration of development. What is this administration of development? It means the supervision of the activities. ठीक है, supervision of activities. Let's say the projects for, let's say, construction of dams, the projects for, let's say, urbanization is going on. So the developmental dynamics includes पहला the supervision of all those activities which are undertaken. ठीक है, so that is captured through first dimension, that is called administration of development. Further said, the developmental dynamics also includes the, that is called the development of administration. DA means development of administration. So development of administration means increase the capacity, right? Increase the capacity of administrative system. ठीक है, it means increase the competency of this, the administrative machinery. ठीक है. So developmental dynamics according to Fredericks includes the two important area, captures the two important area, that is number one, that is called development of administration, and second, administration of development. Administration of development का मतलब supervision of all those activities which is going on, and the development of administration मतलब increase करो capacity, increase the capacity, competency of bureaucracy, increase the competency of what administrative system. So what do you mean by increase? Increase means increase in terms of its professionalism, increase in terms of its efficiency, increase in terms of its meritocracy, increasing in terms of its what? The very instrumentality with respect to the ongoing issues. ठीक है, so you can write that the Fredericks concept with respect to developmental dynamics. आप लिख लोगे. Now what is the basic area? What is the Fredericks ने दो important बोला, एक that is called increase the capacity of the system, दूसरा that जो system जितने भी activities को undertake कर रहा है उन activities का supervision भी होना चाहिए. It means there shall be social accounting, social auditing, sorry, there shall be social auditing, there shall be checks and balance, and the government functionary, every government organization shall be what? That accountable, shall be defensible for their omissions and commissions. They shall be submit the reports, and on that basis of the report the very evaluations of the system should be there. So these are the two important areas that Fredericks had highlighted. But look at the George Gantt viewpoint. इन्होंने नॉर्मेटिव डायमेंशंस ऑफ एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव सिस्टम बात की थी. नॉर्मेटिव का मतलब प्रिस्क्रिप्टिव डायमेंशन. प्रिस्क्रिप्टिव डायमेंशंस का मतलब कि एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव सिस्टम कैसा होना चाहिए. What should be the administrative system? What ought to be the administrative system? That is something called prescriptive dimension of administrative system. So George Gantt, he focused on the prescriptive dimension of administrative system. And what are the prescriptive dimension? He say that with the concept of three terms, that is called loyalty, attitude and purpose. He explained this prescriptive dimensions. So let us understand, what do you mean by loyalty, what do you mean by attitude, and what do you mean by purpose. So when we say the loyalty means what? That is, the administrative system should be loyal to the constitution. The administrative system should be loyal to citizens. The administrative system should be loyal to the social values, social customs. It means the administrative system should serve for the society, should serve for the what is called the welfare of the society, and it is guided by the most fundamental law of the land, that is called constitution. The supreme law of the land, that is called constitution. Thereby the constitution, the administrative system should be loyal to the constitution, to the society, to the citizen, for the welfare of the citizen, to the service of the citizen. That is the first prescriptive dimension explained with the concept of the loyalty. But if we talk about the attitude, because attitude की जब भी हम लोग बात करते हैं तो हम लोग क्या बात करते हैं कि bureaucracy is something called, that is called apathetic institutions. What is bureaucracy? Bureaucracy is called apathetic, that is called asensitive. मतलब that is called bureaucracy is something alienated from the society. The bureaucracy common man के साथ लिंक नहीं हो पाता है. इसी के चलते क्या होता है, there is something called the what is called problem of, that is called alienation. So George Gant tried to explain that the attitude of the administrative system, okay, the very approach of the administrative system, better to write the term, that is called attitude of the administrative system, should be sensitive, should be empathetic to the people, to the issues of the people, to the requirement of the society. So administrative system कैसा होना चाहिए? Sensitive होना चाहिए. Administrative system कैसा होना चाहिए? Empathetic होना चाहिए. Empathy मतलब जो जानते हो, that is called in the ethics you must have read. What do you mean by empathy? Empathy means what? You are feeling the problems of the others by keeping in that place. कि मतलब दूसरे को यदि दर्द हो रहा है, then you can also experience that one. And how that should come? That should come through, let's say, training, through the indoctrination, let's say with the more and more field experiences should be there. So उन्होंने क्या बोला कि the attitude of administrative system कैसा होना चाहिए? Sensitive होना चाहिए. कैसा होना चाहिए? Empathetic होना चाहिए. So that they can understand, so that they can link to the people, to the problems of the society, and they can better address with the that is called problems of the society. So that is the second aspect. Then a third highlighted that the purpose. What should be the purpose? The purpose is what? The welfare. The purpose is the development. Purpose is not should be favoritism. Purpose shall not be the corruption. Purpose shall not be centralization of the power. Purpose shall be decentralization. The purpose shall be empowerment. तो उन्होंने क्या बोला? He simply tried to explain the normative dimensions of administrative system, and the normative dimension is captured through the three important aspects, that is called loyalty, attitude, and the purpose. So loyalty means, yes, administrative system should be loyal to the constitution, should be loyal to the citizens, should be loyal to the society, and they try to understand the problems of the society. Administrative system, the attitude of the administrative system should be sensitive, should be empathetic, so that they can link, they can understand the problems, and they can actually understand the basic problem of the society. इसका मतलब आपको emotionally intelligent भी होने की जरूरत है, right? But on the other hand, what shall be the purpose? Purpose shall be empowerment. The purpose shall not be favoritism, concentration, centralization, rather decentralization, devolution. There shall be more and more participative, so that the concept of the development can be a holistic concept, it is a broader concept, and then ultimate objective of the development can be achieved. Okay? So these are the two important thinkers you keep in mind in the backdrop. So whenever you write the answers, that you should substantiate your answer with such premises. Okay? Frederick's viewpoint, increase the capacity. Second, to administer the activity. For the George Gant, that the loyalty, attitude, and purpose, that how it is linked with the society. Okay? So hope these ideas will definitely going to imbibe and definitely going to improve your the level of understanding with respect to the something called the development. Now let us take this चेंजिंग प्रोफाइल एंड द चेंजिंग डायनामिक्स ऑफ द डेवलपमेंट, कि ये जो कंसेप्ट ऑफ द डेवलपमेंट है किस तरह से पूरा चेंज होता है, और अभी का पैराडाइम क्या है, अभी का प्रीडोमिनेंट नोशन ऑफ द डेवलपमेंट क्या है, तो उसको हम लोग अभी समझते हैं, राइट।